My name is Vera Callahan, and I was 36 the year I stopped answering on the first ring. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday in March. My sister Dana's name on the screen, 9:14 p.m. I almost didn't pick up. I'd learned, over the years, that calls after 9 meant one of two things. Someone had died or someone needed something from me. Our mother was fine. I'd spoken to her that morning, which meant it was the other kind. I picked up anyway. I always did. Dana's voice was warm. Practiced warm, the kind that lives just above sincere. "Vera, we haven't talked in so long. I've been thinking about you." She had not thought about me. I knew because I had her number saved under a note I'd added in January after the last time. The note said, "Last contact November. Asked for $4,200. Loan for Cody's braces." Did not ask again until now. That was 14 months of silence. 14 months of unreturned texts. 14 months of my name absent from the family group chat that I'd only discovered existed because our cousin Renata had accidentally added me to it in December. The chat was called Callahan Fam with a green heart. I was not in it, but for 47 seconds before someone removed me, I saw enough. I saw my name. I saw what they said about me when they thought I wasn't listening. And I saw the plan. Welcome to her silent triumph, where quiet people do the thing that loud families never expect. If you've ever been someone's emergency contact but nobody's first choice, leave a comment below and subscribe. This one is for you. Let me tell you who I was in this family before I tell you who I became. The Callahans of Milford, Ohio, were not wealthy. We were adjacent asterisk to comfortable for exactly the years my father worked at the glass plant on Route 40, and then we were not comfortable at all for the 9 years after he left. My mother, Patricia, raised 4 children in a house with one functional bathroom and a furnace that sounded like it was clearing its throat every February. She worked the early shift at the hospital laundry. She never complained. She had a kind of quiet dignity that I have spent my entire adult life trying to understand and replicate. The 4 of us, Dana, 41, the eldest and the family's official spokesperson. Cody, 38, who married young and spent the years since asking everyone around him to manage the consequences. Renata, 34, our cousin who lived with us from age 11 after her mother left, and who we all considered a sister. And me, Vera, the one who left. I left at 22 with a nursing degree from Columbus State and a job offer at a hospital in Pittsburgh that paid $12,000 more per year than anything I could find in Milford. My mother cried. Dana called it selfish. Cody didn't say anything because Cody rarely did. Renata drove me to the bus station and tucked a card into my bag that said, "Don't come back small." I didn't come back small. By 30, I was an ICU charge nurse. By 34, I had bought a 2-bedroom condo in the Shadyside neighborhood with a view of the park and a mortgage I could manage alone. I drove a 7-year-old Honda that ran perfectly. I had 6 months of emergency savings, a Roth IRA I contributed to every January, and a financial advisor named Glenn who called me his most disciplined client. I told you the numbers because they matter, not because I want credit for them. I want you to understand what my family saw when they looked at me. They didn't see 14 years of 12-hour shifts and skipped vacations and cooking rice and beans 3 nights a week so I could put an extra $200 toward principal. They saw a woman with a nice address and a stable job, which in the Callahan family lexicon translated to available. The pattern started small. It always does. The first time was 2017. Dana's car needed a transmission, $1,800. She called on a Thursday evening with that same practiced warmth. "Vera, you know I wouldn't ask if I had anyone else." I sent it the next morning. She paid back $400 over the following year in increments that stopped without explanation. Then Cody's rent. Then Dana's refrigerator. Then a medical bill for my mother that turned out to be real. I verified it, and that I paid without hesitation because it was my mother, and because that one wasn't a strategy, it was a need. But the others were a strategy. I didn't see it as a strategy for a long time. I told myself that families help each other. I told myself that I had more, so I should give more. I told myself the discomfort I felt every time Dana's name appeared on my screen was just my own selfishness wearing a costume. Then came December, and the 47 seconds in the group chat. Renata had been trying to add someone named Asterisk Becca, her neighbor's daughter who does social media things, to help coordinate Christmas. She'd typed in asterisk RE asterisk, and my name had come up alongside Renata's. She'd selected both by mistake. I was in the chat for less than a minute before someone caught it and removed me. I don't know who. It doesn't matter. What I saw in those 47 seconds, I read 4 times before the screen went dark. Dana, 2 weeks earlier. Vera's going to be a problem about the house. She always makes it complicated. Cody, she'll come around, she always does. Dana, I'm thinking we frame it as a family decision. Mom's getting older. It makes sense to liquidate. Vera gets her share, but we need her to sign. Renata, and this one I read 3 times, she's going to want to know where the money goes. She's going to ask questions. Dana, then we answer the questions that matter and skip the rest. I'll call her in February when she's not thinking about it. Act like I just wanted to catch up. She called in March. She had given herself a month's buffer. I sat with my phone in my hand after that conversation, and I felt something go very still inside me. Not anger, something colder. The specific cold of a person who has just understood something they had been not quite knowing for years. The word for what I felt was asterisk finished. Not with my family, not yet, but finished with performing ignorance. Finished with answering on the first ring. I waited 3 days before I called Glenn. My mother's house on Pinecrest Drive had been in her name alone since 1998. My father had signed it over in the divorce, one of the only decent things he did on his way out. It was a 3-bedroom ranch, 1,400 square feet, with a side porch my mother had screened in herself the summer Cody turned 12. The neighborhood had changed. Property values had risen. The house, last time I'd looked at the county auditor's website, something I did periodically for reasons I hadn't fully examined until that December, was assessed at $214,000. Market value was higher. My mother was 68, healthy, working part-time at the hospital laundry 2 days a week because she said it kept her moving. She had no mortgage. She had a small pension from the hospital union and Social Security. She did not need to sell her house. She did not want to sell her house. She had told me this in October, on the phone, without prompting, in the context of Dana asking her to asterisk think about her options. What Dana wanted to sell was my mother's security for a distribution she could use now. What Cody wanted was his share of anything that constituted a windfall. What Renata, and this one still aches, wanted was to stay in Dana's good graces, which meant not siding with me. What my mother wanted was to stay in her house. What she didn't know was that wanting wasn't enough without paperwork. That was the part I understood from 14 years of watching people arrive at the hospital, having made no plans, and their families fighting in the hallways over decisions that should have been made years earlier in a quiet room with a notary present. I called Glenn. Then I called a woman named Sandra Kowalczyk, an estate planning attorney whose card I'd kept in my wallet for 2 years after she'd given a talk at our hospital's senior resource fair. I'd taken her card for a patient's family. I'd kept it for reasons I hadn't examined. I examined them now. Sandra's office was on the 4th floor of a building on Grant Street, with a waiting room that smelled like coffee and old paper and competence. She was 63, precise, with reading glasses on a chain, and a habit of letting silences sit until they became productive. I told her everything, the group chat, the calls, the pattern of borrowing that had never quite become repaying, the house, my mother. She asked 4 questions. Is your mother currently competent to make legal decisions? Yes, completely. Does she want to stay in her house? Yes. Does she know her children are discussing selling it? She knows Dana has mentioned asterisk options. She doesn't know it's a coordinated plan. And you, what do you want out of this? I thought about that for a moment. I want my mother to be safe. I want her to stay in her house. And I want to stop being the person my family calls when they need something and forgets when they don't. Sandra nodded slowly. Then we have two separate problems. One is legal, one is relational. I can help you with the legal one. The relational one you'll have to handle yourself. She was right on both counts. Here is what Sandra explained, clearly and without drama, over the next 2 meetings. My mother's house was hers. Nothing could happen to it without her signature. The risk was not that Dana could force a sale. She couldn't. The risk was that she could pressure my mother into agreeing to one. My mother, who wanted to be a good mother to all her children. My mother, who had spent 40 years managing the needs of people who were larger and louder than her. My mother, who sometimes agreed to things in a room full of family pressure that she would never have agreed to alone. The protection was not complicated. It was just paperwork. Paperwork my mother needed to want, which meant I needed to tell her what I knew. That conversation happened on a Saturday in April. I drove the 4 hours to Milford. I brought coffee from the place on Market Street she liked. We sat on the screened porch. I told her about the group chat. I showed her the screenshot I had taken of my screen in those 47 seconds before they removed me. I read her the messages. I watched her face. She was quiet for a long time. She looked at the yard, at the tulips she'd planted along the fence line in March. Then she said, quietly and without drama, I knew something was being planned. I didn't know it was that far along. I asked her what she wanted. She said, I want to stay in my house, and I want to stop being managed by my own children. I said, then let's make that official. The legal architecture Sandra built was clean and simple, not complicated, not aggressive, just thorough. A durable power of attorney nomming me as my mother's agent for financial decisions, with specific language limiting that authority unless she became incapacitated. Her choice. Her clarity. Documented by Dr. Elise Farrow, her primary care physician, who provided a capacity letter at Sandra's request. Standard practice, Sandra explained, and something my mother agreed to without hesitation. I want it on record that I know what I'm signing, my mother said. I've been in this family long enough to know records matter. A healthcare directive, also nomming me, because that had needed doing for years and I was ashamed it had taken this long. And a simple, irrevocable instruction letter, not a legal document, but something Sandra advised as a practical layer, signed and notarized by my mother, addressed to any future real estate agent or title company. I, Patricia Callahan, am not considering the sale of my home at 14 Pinecrest Drive. Any representation to the contrary is made without my authority or consent. 3 documents, 2 appointments. One afternoon at Sandra's office where my mother wore her good blouse and answered every question clearly and signed her name in handwriting that was firm and unhurried. We had lunch after at the diner on 5th Street. My mother ordered pie. She said it was the most useful thing she'd done in years. I didn't tell Dana. I didn't tell Cody. I didn't tell Renata. I waited. The invitation came in May. Not a phone call this time. A text from Dana, which was itself a signal. Dana only texted when she wanted a record of warmth without the risk of a real conversation. Hey Vera, we're doing a little family get-together at Mom's for Memorial Day weekend. Would love to have you. It's been too long. Mom's been asking about you. My mother had not mentioned it. I called her that evening. She said, Dana told me she was planning something. I said it was fine. I didn't know she was framing it as my idea. The text had 4 likes from the family group chat, the one I was still not in. I drove to Milford for Memorial Day. The house smelled like my childhood. Charcoal from the grill, Dana's potato salad, the specific combination of cleaning products and old wood that was Pinecrest Drive in every season. The porch was full. Dana and her husband Mark, Cody and his wife Jessamine, Renata, who caught my eye when I came through the door and looked away, 2 of Dana's friends from the neighborhood whose names I could never remember. And my mother, in her yellow cardigan, looking both genuinely happy to see me and carefully watchful in the way of a woman who knows a scene is being staged around her. Lunch was pleasant. That was the strategy, make it pleasant first. Let the food and the nostalgia do the softening work. Dana asked about Pittsburgh. She listened. She laughed at the right places. She poured me iced tea without being asked. It was a masterclass in warmth deployed with precision. The shift happened around 3 o'clock, when the plates were cleared and my mother had settled into her chair on the porch and Cody's kids were in the yard. Dana came to sit beside me at the porch table. Mark drifted to the grill. Renata stayed but didn't speak. Cody pulled a chair from the edge of the porch to face us both, casual, like it was an accident. It wasn't an accident. Vera, Dana said. Her voice had shifted into a register I recognized from every conversation that had ever cost me money. Lower, warmer, slower. We've been talking as a family about Mom, about her situation. She's getting older. The house is a lot. And frankly, the property value is at a point where if we were smart about it, the timing could be really good for all of us. I said nothing. Dana continued. The house needed work. The furnace, I said nothing. The roof, I said nothing. The neighborhood was changing, I said nothing. There were memory care facilities she'd toured. Not that Mom needed that, but as a long-term plan, I said nothing. Cody leaned forward. We're not saying force anything. We're saying have a conversation. As a family, all 4 of us together. All 4 of us. As if I were already a vote in a process that had been decided months ago. I looked at my mother. She was looking at the tulips. I set down my iced tea. I have a question, I said. When did you start planning this? A pause. Dana smiled. We've all just been talking naturally over time. December, asterisk, I said. The group chat. The one I was accidentally added to for about a minute. The porch went quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of an afternoon. The specific quiet of a room recalculating. Dana's smile held. Barely, that was just. You said you'd call me in February when I wasn't thinking about it. I kept my voice at the volume of a normal conversation. No edge, no anger, just the words, you called in March. Renata looked at the floor. Cody looked at Dana. Dana looked at me with an expression I'd never quite seen on her face before. The expression of a person who has been operating on the assumption that no one is watching, who has just understood that someone was. Vera, asterisk, she said, we're family. We're trying to do what's best for Mom. Then you should know that Mom has already decided what's best for herself. I reached into my bag. Sandra had suggested I bring a copy of the capacity letter and the POA, not to wield them, but to have them present in case I needed a foundation under my words. I placed them on the table between us. Mom signed a durable power of attorney in April. She also has a physician's capacity evaluation on file documenting that she made this decision with full clarity and no pressure. The letter of intent to any real estate agent or title company has been notarized. Dana stared at the papers. Cody was very still. The house isn't available for sale, I said. Not because I'm preventing it, because Mom doesn't want to sell it. And now that preference has a legal structure around it that means a phone call to a realtor won't be enough to override it. If anyone wants to challenge it, they're welcome to consult an attorney. Sandra Kowalczyk on Grant Street in Pittsburgh can provide a referral. I said Sandra's name because it mattered to name the professional. Because I had learned from 14 years of patient advocacy that an abstract document is a suggestion, but a named attorney is a wall. My mother spoke from her chair. She hadn't moved. She was still looking at the tulips. Her voice was quiet. I've asked Vera to help me manage my affairs. That is my decision. It's not up for discussion. 5 words from Dana then. You went around us. I looked at her. You were planning to go around her. The party ended early. Dana and Mark left at 4:30. Cody followed 20 minutes later. Renata lingered by the door for a moment, not quite meeting my eyes, then said in a low voice, I should have said something in December. She left before I could answer. I stayed. My mother and I sat on the screened porch until the light went orange and then gray, and she talked about the tulips she'd planted, and the summer she'd screened the porch, and the year Cody had broken 3 windows in one afternoon with a poorly aimed baseball, and she'd made him repair 2 of them himself. Stories I'd heard before. Stories I listened to again. At one point, she said, I knew they were planning something. I wasn't sure I could stop it alone. I said, You didn't have to." She said, "No, I just had to ask the right person." In the months after Memorial Day, the consequences came quietly, the way they always do in families that operate through implication and omission. Dana stopped calling. This was not a punishment, or perhaps it was, but it was also, inadvertently, a gift. 6 months of silence, during which I did not exist to her in any active sense, and during which I felt the specific relief of a woman who has been holding her phone in dread for years and has finally set it down. Cody sent a text in July. "Think you handled that pretty harshly." I read it. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say to harshly that would accomplish anything useful. Renata called in August. That conversation was longer. She said she had known it was wrong from the beginning. She said she'd told herself it wasn't her place to step in. She said she'd been afraid of Dana's disapproval for so long she'd stopped noticing she was afraid. We talked for an hour. I don't know yet what that conversation will grow into, but it was honest. That matters. My mother called me every Sunday. We talked about the tulips, about her part-time shifts, about the book she was reading, about a cardinal that had been visiting her feeder with a persistence she found personally flattering. She did not talk about the house. She didn't need to. The house was there. It was hers. The paperwork said so. Dana called in November. I let it ring. She called again in December. I answered. Her voice was back to practiced warm. "Vera, we're doing Christmas at Mom's. She wants everyone there. It's been a hard year." A pause. "I miss you." I sat with that for a moment. I thought about the 47 seconds in December of last year. I thought about the tulips. I thought about my mother's handwriting on the POA, which was firm and clear and looked nothing like a woman who needed to be managed. "Dana," I said, "I'll be there for Christmas. I love Mom. But I need you to understand something, and I need you to understand it once so we don't have to keep understanding it." She waited. "I'm not the family bank. I'm not the person you call when you need something and don't talk to when you don't. I'm either your sister or I'm not. And if I'm your sister, it means you call me in October just to call. It means you ask how I'm doing before you ask me for anything. It means you remember that I exist in the months when you don't need a favor. I kept my voice even. Not angry, just clear. If you can do that, then yes. Christmas. I'll bring the good wine and I'll stay 2 nights. If you can't, then I'll have my own Christmas here and I'll visit Mom separately." A long silence. "Then, you've been keeping track." "I've always been keeping track," I said. "I just stopped pretending I wasn't." I drove to Milford for Christmas. It was not warm. It was not transformed. Dana and I were careful with each other in the way of 2 people who have stopped performing and haven't yet figured out what's underneath. Cody was quieter than usual. Renata sat next to me at dinner, and we talked about her job and her neighbor's kid named Becca, and neither of us mentioned the group chat. My mother made pierogi. She'd learned from an old neighbor decades ago and perfected them across 30 years of Christmases. She stood at the stove with her wooden spoon and her yellow cardigan and the specific satisfaction of a woman in her own kitchen, in her own house, making food she was good at. After dinner, she found me alone in the hallway. She pressed my hand. Hers was warm from the stove. "Thank you," she said. I didn't answer right away. I looked at the walls of the hallway, at the school photos in mismatched frames, at the watercolor she'd hung there in 1994 that she'd painted herself in a community class, at the small table where the phone used to sit when we were children, and the phone was the center of everything that happened in a house. "I should have asked sooner what you wanted," I said. "I should have asked instead of assuming you were fine." She squeezed my hand once. "You asked when it mattered." She went back to the kitchen. I stood in the hallway for another moment, listening to the sound of my family through the walls, the voices, the silverware, the specific acoustic signature of a house that has held the same people for decades. And I thought about what it means to protect someone quietly, without fanfare, with paperwork and patience and a 4-hour drive and a Saturday afternoon on a screened porch. The loudest thing I ever did in my family was the thing nobody heard me do. There is a spreadsheet on my laptop. It has been there since January of the year I finally looked directly at what I had been not quite seeing. It contains every transfer, every loan, every amount I had sent to my siblings over 14 years. The total is a number I'm not going to say out loud because the number is not the point. The point is that I kept it, not to use it as a weapon, not to present it at a dinner table or copy it into a group chat. I kept it because for years I had told myself that the discomfort I felt when Dana called was my own selfishness, and I needed evidence that it wasn't. I needed to be able to look at something concrete and say, this is real, and you are not imagining it, and you are allowed to feel what you feel about it. I still answer Dana's calls, not on the first ring, not with dread, but I answer them because she is my sister and because I have decided that the door stays open even when the threshold has a new requirement. The requirement is simple. See me when you don't need anything. She's getting better at it, slowly, the way people get better at things they were never taught. People think the strongest response to betrayal is the loudest one. The confrontation at the table, the voice raised, the ultimatum delivered in front of an audience. What I have learned, from 14 years of ICU nursing and 1 year of learning to read my own family clearly, is that the strongest response is almost always the quietest one. It is the Saturday appointment with an estate attorney. It is the document signed in a good blouse with firm handwriting. It is the iced tea set down on a porch table and the words spoken at conversation volume. It is showing up with the paperwork instead of the argument. My mother's house is still on Pinecrest Drive. The tulips come back every April. The cardinal visits the feeder with what my mother continues to describe as personal loyalty. The screened porch holds 2 chairs, an afternoon light, and the particular silence of a woman who has decided what she wants and has the legal infrastructure to back it up. She is fine. She is staying. And I learned something I should have learned years earlier. Being available is not the same as being loved, and being needed is not the same as being wanted. The people who love you will call in October, for no reason, just to call. That's the whole story. 1 47-second mistake, 1 stack of documents, and a mother who, when someone finally asked her what she wanted, answered without hesitation. She wanted to stay. So she stayed. If someone in your life only remembers you exist when they need something, that pattern has a name. You're allowed to name it. Share this with someone who needed to hear it today. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.